So many Territorians lost their employment during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're not out of the woods yet, but lots of us are getting the old resumes together and sending them out in the hopes of securing that next new position. But maybe a good resume just isn't enough. Joining me now to continue the conversation, David Campbell, business coaching and facilitation expert. Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Mel. Yourself?
Look, I'm good, buddy. For a lot of Territorians and for a lot of Australians, they're finding themselves in a position that they probably have never been in before, or it's been a bloody long time since they had to apply for a job. And now things are different, aren't they?
Oh, look, absolutely, totally different. You know, you're going to be one of thousands of people going for positions, and you've got to try and get to the top of that pack.
And it's hard when, you know, you might have been employed by the same employer for a very long time, or perhaps, like me, you very often don't have to apply for a job. Someone gives you a bit of a tap on the shoulder. So it's hard to know where to start.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely it is. It's a real challenge for anyone who's been made redundant, you know, or just simply left one job looking for another job. You know, where do you start with all this sort of stuff?
Do you know, it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine who, you know, found themselves without a job due to COVID-19 and now having to look again, and he was going through his resume and the things that he had to use, and all of his references were typed. They were letters.
Oh.
That's different now.
So different now. I won't do written references for people. It just takes too much time. So I'm quite happy to take a phone call, but when it comes to actually writing out a reference, no, I'm not going to spend the time.
And I guess for a lot of people looking to employ someone, they don't want to sit and read them. They want the quick phone calls. So if we're putting together the job application, if we're looking at a killer resume, what do we do, and what else should we be thinking about?
Look, I think the first thing to think about is to see the entire application process as one activity, not as I'm putting in a resume, I'm responding to criteria, I'm going for an interview. It needs to be locked together, and you need a strategy for how you're going to approach this and get through a lot of those barriers that are now there that you don't realise exist. Things like application tracking systems, that it's purely a computer. And if you don't have the right words in your resume, it won't pick you out of the group.
Really?
Absolutely. But even if you look at it, you know, if you're reading 500 resumes, you will look and you'll think to yourself, I'm going to look for the key attributes of the person that I'm wanting to employ.
Yeah.
And so if those words don't come out on a resume quickly, you'll simply put it to one side. You may miss the best candidate, but you know, I put that down to it's not really your fault, because you're trying to process the information that you're being given.
So how do you know what the trigger words are or the buzzwords are? How do you get a head start against the computer?
Absolutely. Well, this is what I do. Well, part of my work is coaching people around this process. It is as simple as, firstly, having a strategy for how you approach doing job applications. So making sure that everything links from your covering letter through your resume, through your responses to criteria, through to the interview, that all the language is standardised across all of that, and you base that standardised language on the job ad.
Right.
So when they say that they want a person who is a team player, you need to have those keywords, team player, all the way through your resume. And you know, I know myself. I don't use the term team player.
No.
Team player. It's not me. I work collaboratively and all of, but collaborative working, while you and I recognise it as team player, if I'm scanning for keywords, it won't come up.
So we need to try and not be too clever and to grab the thesaurus and look at different ways to make us sound like we're a bit cleverer than we are.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And then using that same technique all the way through, you can actually practice for interviews. Even though you don't know what the questions are, you can prepare a strategy for how you can answer questions at interview and use those keywords through that process.
Okay, so that's an excellent bit of advice. So when you're looking through the attributes that the employer is looking for, you need to mirror that through all the stages.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of them will actually say in their ad, contact officer, Mary Smith. Well, if you haven't rung Mary Smith and spoken to her, you're going to miss half the key words that organisation's talking.
Oh, okay. Because sometimes people might think, I don't want to bother Mary. I don't want her to think I'm a pain in the butt. I won't call her. But is that the opposite of what we should be doing?
It is absolutely the opposite of what you should be doing. And I'm very much one of respect. So you make the contact with Mary and you say, I'd like 10 minutes of your time. And you watch the clock and you ask your questions. And I've always found, my experience is when you get to the 10 minutes, you say, look, I've reached the end of the time that I allocated for this. They will often turn to you and say, well, that's great, but do you have any other questions? They have just invited you to ask more.
Wow.
So be respectful in that phone call. Have some questions ready to ask, but be ready to cut the call in that respectful way.
Yeah. And then I guess they then are the ones who are trying to engage you.
Absolutely. Well, the whole process, a lot of us still think that applying for a job is, convincing someone to employ you. But I actually think that it's a two-way street. You need to, when you apply for a job, you need to actually decide, do I want to work for this organisation?
Yeah.
And so the information you give to them helps them make the decision. But equally, engaging with them helps you make the decision. Do I like the culture of this organisation? Do I like the people that I'm engaging with through this process? Even though they may not ultimately be people you work with, but they will carry the culture of that organisation.
And maybe if you have that little connection, that little spark when you're on the phone, they might keep their eye out for your application when it comes through.
Absolutely. I know when I've been in that role, that contact officer role, I keep myriads of notes on who's contacted me and what they asked.
Right.
Because it tells me so much more about the individual.
Right. Okay. So far we've picked up using those keywords right through your whole application process, making the phone call and connecting with the person who is going to be the contact officer. What else have you got, Dave?
Oh, look, things like covering letters. People say, they don't ask for a covering letter. Care factor. Put it on the front of your resume.
Yep. Okay.
But the whole idea of the covering letter is to actually set in the mind of the reader some of the key attributes that introduce you to reading the resume.
Right.
One of the classics that I've been dealing with recently is this whole concept of some clients of mine returning to work after having family. And I said, look, deal with the elephant in the room, deal with the gap. Because you can actually say some really key things about raising a family. My hats are off to ladies who take time off work to raise kids. I think that is an admirable activity. And the things you learn scheduling, you learn applying rules and discipline. You're managing a household. All of these things are positive attributes that you can carry into the workforce.
Yeah. So rather than pushing it under the rug.
Yeah. And we say, I just raised my kids. No, you didn't. You did an awesome job.
Yeah.
And those skills are the skills that I need in my workplace.
You should be giving yourself Employee of the Month every month.
Absolutely.
And finally, just to wrap it up this morning, David, what is your gold star? What is the number one thing that we should just be throwing out there when we're diving back in?
Oh, look, I think you apply for every position you think you can, and you treat them all as training for the one that you win. So you go to these interviews and you debrief after them, and you learn from that experience, and you apply those learnings to the next one and the next one. I at one stage many years ago, I was out of work for 6 months. I applied for 180 jobs. And like you, the one that I got was actually a network contact.
Yeah.
So, but learn from the experience of going to these interviews, tightening up your resume, making sure that it's all right. And, don't be afraid to ask for help, for goodness sake.
Excellent advice this morning from David Campbell, business coaching and facilitation expert. Thanks for your time, buddy. I reckon you've got a few Territorians across the line. Thanks so much.
Look, that's great. I'm glad I can help.